10:22 in the morning, June 4, 1942, 200 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. You are strapped into the back seat of a dauntless dive bomber, 20,000 feet above the Pacific. The engine screams. The wind through the dive brake sounds like a train derailing inside your skull. Below you, 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, the same 4 that hit Pearl Harbor 6 months ago. The man in the front seat is Lieutenant Richard Best, 31 years old. In the next 90 seconds, he will do something that changes the war. He is aiming for the carrier Kaga. Then he sees them. Too many American bombers converging on the same ship. Every bomb is going to the same target. Best pulls back on the stick. He breaks formation at 400 knots. He swings his 3-plane section left toward a different ship. The flagship, Akagi, Admiral Nagumo's carrier. 1 bomb, 6 minutes. 3 Japanese carriers burning. For 60 years, the world believed the Japanese lost because they were 5 minutes from launching. 5 Fateful Minutes. It's the most famous story of the Pacific War. The Japanese carrier's own logs prove that story is wrong. This is what actually happened. The Coral Sea, early May 1942. 2 American carriers meet 2 Japanese carriers in the first naval battle in history, where the opposing ships never see each other. Everything happens through the air. When the smoke clears, the Americans lose the carrier Lexington. The Japanese lose the light carrier Shoho. But the real damage runs deeper than the ledger shows. The Japanese fleet carrier Shokaku takes 3 bomb hits and limps home to Kuri for months of repairs. Her sister ship Zuikaku sails away intact, but her air group is gutted. Half her pilots are dead or wounded. She cannot fight either. 2 of Japan's 6 fleet carriers are out of the war, and no one in Tokyo understands yet how much that matters. In a wood-paneled cabin aboard the battleship Yamato, anchored in the inland sea of Japan, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto is staring at a map. He is 58 years old. His hair is cropped short and going grey at the temples. He is missing 2 fingers on his left hand, souvenirs from the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, when he was a young midshipman at Tsushima. Yamamoto understands America better than any other officer in the Imperial Navy. He studied at Harvard. He served as a naval attaché in Washington. He has driven across the American continent and watched the oil derricks rise out of the Texas plains and the steel mills of Pittsburgh run day and night. He knows exactly what his country is fighting, which is why he is desperate. The war is 6 months old. Japan has run wild across the Pacific, exactly as Yamamoto predicted she would. The Philippines have fallen. Singapore has fallen. The Dutch East Indies, Burma, Wake Island, Guam. The map on his desk is a spreading stain of Japanese red from the Aleutians to the Solomon Islands. But Yamamoto is not celebrating. He is running the arithmetic in his head, the same arithmetic he ran before Pearl Harbor. American shipyards are already laying keels for a new generation of fleet carriers. American factories will produce 47,000 aircraft this year alone. Japan will produce fewer than 9,000. Every month the war continues, the gap widens. Every month Japan grows relatively weaker. He needs a decisive battle. He needs to destroy the American carriers, all of them, in one engagement. He needs it now, before the industrial tide breaks over him. His eyes move across the map, past the Marianas, past Wake, past Hawaii, and stop at a tiny atoll, 1,100 miles northwest of Pearl Harbor. Midway. Midway is a small and remote atoll, but its airfields, submarine facilities, and position northwest of Hawaii give it real strategic value to both sides. The Americans cannot afford to lose it. If Japan takes Midway, the American carriers will have to come out and fight for it. And when they come out, Yamamoto will be waiting, with the largest fleet ever assembled in the Pacific. 8 aircraft carriers, 11 battleships, 22 cruisers, 65 destroyers, 200,000 men. The Americans have 3 carriers, and they don't know they are walking into a trap. That at least is what Yamamoto believes. He is wrong. The trap is already broken. It has been broken for weeks. And the man who broke it works in a windowless basement in Pearl Harbor, wearing a red velvet smoking jacket over his uniform and slippers on his feet because his Oxfords hurt his ankles. His name is Commander Joseph Rochefort. He is 42 years old, thin, rumpled, rarely shaven. He has not eaten a proper meal in weeks. His men bring him sandwiches that go cold on the corner of his desk while he stares at Japanese characters printed on long strips of paper. Rochefort runs Station Hypo, the combat intelligence unit of the 14th Naval District. Below the administration building, in a converted machine shop known as the Dungeon, he commands a team of about 140 men, codebreakers, translators, radio operators, punch card technicians. They work in 3 shifts. The lights never go out. The air smells of ink and cigarette smoke and sweat. For months they have been chipping away at Japan's main naval operational code, designated JN-25B by American intelligence. It is a code within a code, a 5-digit numerical system layered under an additive cipher. On any given day, Hypo can read perhaps 10 to 15% of intercepted messages, enough to see the shape of things. Not always enough to see the details. By mid-May, the shape becomes unmistakable. Something enormous is moving. The intercepted messages are thick with references to a target designated only by 2 letters. AF. Rochefort is certain. AF is Midway. His superiors in Washington are not. The Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington believes AF might be the Aleutians, or the West Coast, or Panama. There is a bureaucratic knife fight brewing between Hypo and Washington, and if Washington wins, Nimitz will position his carriers in the wrong ocean. Rochefort needs proof. Absolute, unambiguous proof. He designs a trap. In mid-May, the Naval Command at Midway is instructed to transmit an unencrypted radio message to Pearl Harbor. The message says the island's water distillation plant has broken down. Fresh water is running short. 2 days later, a Japanese intercept station transmits a coded message to Tokyo. Rochefort's team decrypts it. The message reports that the target designated AF is experiencing a shortage of fresh water. Rochefort has his proof. He carries the intercept up to the office of the man he answers to on the fleet staff, Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton. Layton is 39. He is Nimitz's fleet intelligence officer. He speaks fluent Japanese. He served in Tokyo before the war and knew several of the Japanese admirals he now hunts. On the 27th of May, Layton walks into the office of Admiral Chester Nimitz with a prediction on a single sheet of paper. Nimitz is 57, white-haired, blue-eyed, unshakable. He has been Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet for 5 months, ever since Roosevelt sacked the man who was in the chair on the morning of Pearl Harbor. He listens to Layton in silence. Layton tells him the Japanese carriers will attack Midway on the morning of June 4th. They will approach from 325 degrees, bearing northwest. They will be sighted approximately 175 miles from the island. The attack will come at dawn. Nimitz looks at him. He asks how confident Layton is in the prediction. Layton tells him he is very confident. 2 weeks later, Layton's prediction will turn out to be off by 5 minutes, off by 5 degrees, off by 5 miles. It is one of the most accurate intelligence forecasts in the history of naval warfare, and every man in the room knows what it is worth. Nimitz has 3 carriers to work with. He needs every one of them at Point Luck, a rendezvous 350 miles northeast of Midway, by the 3rd of June. The first problem is command. His best fighting admiral, William Halsey, has just returned from the Doolittle raid, exhausted and covered in a violent rash. Halsey is 59 years old, aggressive, beloved by his sailors, and by the time he walks into Nimitz's office at the end of May, he is scratching himself bloody. The doctors call it general dermatitis, a stress-induced allergic reaction that has spread across his entire body. He cannot sleep. He cannot function. Nimitz orders him into the naval hospital. Halsey recommends his successor before he goes. The man he names is not an aviator. He has never commanded a carrier task force. He has never flown an airplane. His name is Raymond Spruance. He is 55 years old. Halsey's cruiser screen commander. Quiet, analytical, so reserved that his own officers call him cold. Nimitz accepts the recommendation without argument. Spruance takes command of Task Force 16, the two carriers Enterprise and Hornet, and steams to sea on the 28th of May. The third carrier is a problem of a different kind entirely. Yorktown limped into Pearl Harbor on the 27th of May with a hole in her hull, a warped flight deck, and structural damage from a Japanese bomb that had exploded deep inside her at the Battle of the Coral Sea 3 weeks earlier. The repair yard's initial estimate was 3 months of work. Nimitz has 3 days. He gives the order anyway. 1,400 shipyard workers swarm aboard Yorktown before she is even properly moored. They work in 3 shifts around the clock: welders, electricians, fitters, steel plate cutters. The dry dock is drained, and Nimitz himself walks under her hull in rubber boots, inspecting the damage with the yard superintendent. Sparks rain down from the deck above. Compressed air hoses hiss in every compartment. The men working on Yorktown have not slept in 72 hours when she casts off on the 30th of May. Welders are still aboard. They will finish their work at sea and be transferred to a destroyer for the trip back to Pearl. Her flight deck is patched. Her boilers are running on reduced power. She is not repaired. She has been resurrected. She sails to Point Luck under the command of Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, who is 57 years old, and who, as senior officer present, will command the entire American force at Midway. Fletcher is a surface warfare officer, not a naval aviator, but he has already gained valuable carrier command experience at the Battle of the Coral Sea. He is cautious by nature and by experience. He has been criticized before the war for being too slow, too careful. He is exactly the right man for what is coming. Without those 72 hours in dry dock, the American carrier count is not 3 against 4. It is 2 against 4. And when the fighting starts on the 4th of June, and the Japanese carrier Hiryu is still afloat after the first American strike, she will have a target waiting for her second wave. The 72 hours in Pearl Harbor Navy Yard are not just repair work. They are the difference between a hard-won victory and a catastrophic defeat. 1,400 welders and fitters, sweating in the darkness under her hull, do as much to win the battle as any pilot who will fly against her enemies 3 days later. Nimitz sends his commanders to sea with a single written instruction, and it is one of the most important documents of the Pacific War. You will be governed by the principle of calculated risk. This means the avoidance of exposure of your force to attack by superior enemy forces, without good prospect of inflicting, as a result of such exposure, greater damage to the enemy. It is not permission to be aggressive. It is not permission to be cautious. It is permission to think, to weigh, to decide in the moment whether the prize is worth the price. Fletcher and Spruance read the order and understand it. They will not throw their carriers away for glory. They will not run from a fight they can win. They will do the arithmetic in real time, the way Yamamoto is doing his in Yokohama. They sail. Enterprise and Hornet leave Pearl on the 28th. Yorktown follows on the 30th, still smelling of fresh welding. By the 2nd of June, all 3 carriers are stationed at Point Luck, roughly 350 miles northeast of Midway, where the Japanese search planes are not looking. The trap is set. The Japanese are steaming straight into it, and they have no idea. The Japanese have their own intelligence problems, but they do not know it yet. The plan Yamamoto approved is called Operation MI. It is complex. It relies on surprise. It relies on the American carriers being at Pearl Harbor when the attack begins. And it relies on knowing where the American carriers actually are. To find out, Japanese intelligence plans a long-range reconnaissance mission called Operation K. Two large four-engine flying boats, Kawanishi H-8s, will fly from the Marshall Islands to a remote atoll called French Frigate Shoals, 300 miles northwest of Hawaii. There, they will rendezvous with a Japanese submarine carrying aviation fuel. The submarine will refuel the flying boats. The flying boats will then fly on to Pearl Harbor, count the American carriers in port, and radio the result back to Tokyo. It has been done before. In March of 1942, two Japanese flying boats used exactly this method to drop bombs on Honolulu, though the bombs landed harmlessly in the hills above the city. But when the crews of Operation K reach French Frigate Shoals in late May, they find American ships anchored inside the lagoon. A seaplane tender, destroyers. The atoll is being used by the American Navy as a forward refueling station. There is nowhere to land, nowhere for the submarine to surface. Operation K is cancelled. Nagumo will never know if the American carriers were in port. He will assume they were. The second Japanese intelligence effort is a line of submarines. 13 boats are ordered to patrol the sea lanes between Pearl Harbor and Midway. If the American carriers sortie from Pearl toward Midway, the submarines will spot them and radio a warning. The submarines arrive on station on the 3rd of June. They are 2 days late. By the time they take their positions, Fletcher and Spruance are already at Point Luck, 300 miles beyond the picket line. Nagumo is not told about the delay. He will assume the submarines are in place. He will assume the picket line is intact. He will steam toward Midway, believing that if the American carriers were coming, he would know. And then there is the third failure, and it is the most damning of all. Yamamoto, aboard Yamato in the Combined Fleet flagship, has begun to receive worrying signals. Japanese radio intelligence has detected a sharp increase in American radio traffic out of Pearl Harbor in the last week of May. Something is happening. Someone is talking. Yamamoto's staff considers whether to transmit a warning to Nagumo. They decide against it. They assume Nagumo's radio operators on Akagi are picking up the same signals. They believe he can draw his own conclusions. He cannot. Akagi's radio suite is configured for tactical communications, not for the long-range signals intelligence work that Yamato's staff is doing. Her operators are not monitoring the same frequencies. She is not picking up the American traffic. She hears nothing unusual. She has no reason to believe anything is wrong. Yamamoto knows something. He does not tell Nagumo. He assumes Nagumo already knows. This is not sabotage. It is not conspiracy. It is a failure of communication between two headquarters that trust each other too much and share information too little. It is the kind of failure that looks trivial in the moment and catastrophic in retrospect. Nagumo will sail into the trap deaf and blind, while the man commanding him from 300 miles behind holds the warning in his hand and never sends it. The Japanese carrier fleet is called the Kido Butai, the Mobile Striking Force. It is the most powerful naval air arm on the planet. 6 months earlier, it launched 350 planes at Pearl Harbor and destroyed the American battle line in 90 minutes. It has raided from Hawaii to Ceylon without losing a single ship. Its pilots are the best trained in the world. Its ships are the best in the world. And in the last week of May, 4 of them are steaming east across the empty Pacific toward Midway. The flagship is Akagi, 28,000 tons, 855 feet long. Her flight deck is painted with the rising sun. She flies the flag of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, commander of the Kido Butai. Nagumo is 55 years old, small, compact, a surface warfare officer his entire career, torpedo specialist by training, forced by the accidents of promotion into command of a force he does not fully understand. Nagumo did not want to command carriers. He does not fly. He does not speak the aviator's language. When his air staff briefs him, he listens carefully and asks the wrong questions. He has been in command of the Kido Butai for 18 months, and he still cannot shake the feeling that he is the guest at his own dinner party. Akagi's captain is Taijiro Aoki, 50 years old, competent and professional, and unremarkable. The second carrier is Kaga. Older in origin and slower than Akagi, she had been converted from the hull of a Tosa-class battleship, but she carries more aircraft than any ship in the fleet, 90+. Her captain is Jisaku Okada, 52, a heavy-set man known for his loud laugh and his short temper. He is on the bridge with his staff every morning by 5. The third carrier is Soryu, fast, sleek, the first purpose-built Japanese carrier of the modern era. Her captain is Ryusaku Yanagimoto, 48, tall for a Japanese officer, austere, the kind of commander who quotes classical poetry to his junior officers and expects them to understand. The fourth carrier is Hiryu, Soryu's sister ship. Her captain is Tomeo Kaku, 49, and above him flies the flag of the most dangerous man in the Kido Butai, Rear Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi is 49 years old. He is a naval aviator, one of the very few flag officers in the Imperial Navy who actually understands what carriers can do. He studied at Princeton University from 1921 to 1923. He speaks English with a New Jersey accent. He is widely considered the most likely successor to Yamamoto himself when the old admiral retires. He is aggressive where Nagumo is cautious. He is decisive where Nagumo hesitates. He is on the wrong ship, in the wrong seat, subordinate to the wrong man. At Midway, that will matter. Between them, the four carriers carry 248 aircraft. The Zero fighter, still the finest carrier fighter in the world, in the summer of 1942. The Val dive bomber, veteran of Pearl Harbor and Ceylon. The Kate torpedo bomber, the deadliest carrier-launched torpedo plane afloat. And behind the cockpits sit the pilots who have never lost a battle. They are steaming east at 25 knots, into a low overcast, through steady rain, blind to the trap ahead of them. On the bridge of Akagi, Nagumo studies the operations plan. He has read it a dozen times. He has been assured that the American carriers are in Pearl Harbor. He has been assured that the submarines are watching for any that might sortie. He has been assured that his own reconnaissance will cover any gaps. He has been assured of a great many things, and none of them are true. Before the operation, Nagumo's staff accepts a relatively limited dawn search plan, reflecting the expectation that American carriers will not already be waiting northeast of Midway. On the morning of the 4th of June, only 7 aircraft will fly the search patterns, and the most important of them, the search plane from the cruiser Tone assigned to Sector 5, will take off 30 minutes late because of a catapult malfunction. Those 30 minutes will decide the battle. By the evening of the 3rd of June, both the fleets are within striking range of each other, and neither knows it. Yamamoto is aboard Yamato, 600 miles behind Nagumo, maintaining strict radio silence. Nagumo is 250 miles northwest of Midway, steaming southeast at a steady 25 knots. Fletcher and Spruance are 300 miles northeast of Midway, holding station in a light overcast, waiting for morning. Between them, on the atoll itself, the American garrison is preparing for what everyone knows is coming. The Marines are digging in. The PBY patrol bombers are being fueled. The Marine Fighter Squadron, VMF 221, is being briefed on the outdated Brewster Buffalos and worn F-4F Wildcats. It will fly into a hopeless battle at dawn. On Hornet, Lieutenant Commander John Waldron of Torpedo Squadron 8 is writing a letter to his wife. He is 41 years old. He is 1/8 Sioux. He commands 15 obsolete Devastator torpedo bombers and 30 men, and he has been telling anyone who will listen for weeks that if the battle comes down to those aircraft, most of his squadron is not coming back. In his letter, he writes that he believes his squadron will attack tomorrow, and that if they do, he expects heavy losses. He asks his wife to give his love to his daughters. He writes that he has always believed in what he was doing and that he does not regret it. He seals the envelope. He hands it to a chaplain. He will not survive the next 36 hours. Neither will 29 of his 30 men. The letter will reach his wife 3 weeks later. On Enterprise, Lieutenant Richard Best of Bombing Squadron 6 is checking his aircraft with the plane captain. He is 31 years old. He is small, dark-haired, precise. He has flown SPD Dauntless dive bombers for 2 years. Tomorrow he will lead a 3-plane section. He does not know that his section will change the war. He does not know that his own bomb, dropped from 1,500 feet, will kill the flagship of the most powerful carrier force in the Pacific. He does not know that a faulty oxygen bottle in his cockpit is already leaking caustic soda vapor into his lungs. He does not know that by tomorrow night he will be coughing blood, and that he will never fly a combat mission again. He climbs down from the wing. He walks below decks. He eats supper. He goes to bed. The sun sets over the Central Pacific on the 3rd of June, 1942. 2 fleets sleep on the water. 2 commanders stand on their bridges and watch the last light drain from the horizon. At Pearl Harbor, in his basement office, Joseph Rochefort has not slept in 3 days. He is waiting. Aboard Yamamoto is playing shogi with his chief of staff, saying nothing. Aboard Akagi, Nagumo is reading a report and finding no cause for concern. At Midway, the garrison stands to at general quarters. A young marine on the rim of the atoll's eastern beach looks out into the darkness. He hears nothing. He sees nothing. He does not know that 400 miles to the northwest, in the black water under a low overcast, 4 Japanese aircraft carriers are turning into the wind. The morning of the 4th of June is coming, and the men who will decide the Pacific War are already in their bunks. 4:30 in the morning, June 4th, 1942. The eastern horizon is still black when the first Zero fighter roars down the flight deck of Akagi. It lifts into the darkness with its navigation lights burning, climbs into a slow orbit above the fleet, and waits for the rest to join it. One after another they come. Zero's first 36 of them. Then the Val dive bombers, 36, their fixed landing gear hanging like talons. Then the Kate torpedo bombers, 36 of them, carrying not torpedoes today but heavy land bombs. Because their target is a coral atoll, not a ship. 108 aircraft in all. The mornings strike on Midway. They form up above the fleet in a slow circling formation, while the sky lightens behind them from black to steel gray to pale rose. At the head of the formation flies Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga. He is 30 years old. He is the air group commander of Hiryu. He is leading a strike from Akagi because the Akagi air group commander is sick with appendicitis. He does not know that he will be dead before sunset. At 4:45, Tomonaga waggles his wings. The formation turns southeast toward Midway and drops down to 5,000 feet. The engines settle into the long, steady drone of a long-range flight. The pilots eat rice balls from paper wrappings. They watch the sea slide past below. Back on Akagi, Nagumo watches the last aircraft disappear into the pink dawn. He turns to his staff. His face is calm. He orders the second wave brought up from the hangars and prepared for launch. The second wave is a different animal. 93 aircraft, held in reserve for the exact contingency that the plan says will not occur. Kate torpedo bombers loaded with the deadly Type 91 aerial torpedoes. Val dive bombers loaded with armor-piercing bombs. They are the ship killers, and they are waiting in case the American carriers appear. They are not going to appear. The plan says so. Nagumo believes the plan. But the second wave is ready, just in case. The hangar decks below Akagi are enormous, hot, cavernous spaces smelling of aviation gasoline and hot metal. The Kates sit in rows with their wings folded. Ground crews swarm around them. Ordnance men roll the torpedoes into position on wheeled trolleys. Each torpedo weighs a ton. Each one is a masterpiece of engineering, capable of running 3,000 yards at 42 knots and breaking the back of any ship in the American fleet. Everything is in place. Everything is ready. Everything is about to go catastrophically wrong. 7 o'clock in the morning. Tomonaga is over Midway. The American Marines fire everything they have at him. Anti-aircraft guns hammer up from every emplacement. 26 Marine fighters rise to meet the Japanese attack, and 17 are lost in the disastrous interception. The old Brewster Buffaloes and worn F-4F Wildcats claw into the sky and are butchered by the Zeros. But Tomonaga cannot destroy Midway with what he has brought. The runways are still usable. The fuel dumps are burning but not destroyed. The anti-aircraft defenses are still firing. He circles once, twice, and then he keys his radio and transmits a message that changes the battle. There is a need for a second attack. The message reaches Akagi at 7:05. On the bridge, Nagumo listens. He looks at his chief of staff, Rear Admiral Ryunosuke Kusaka. He looks at his air staff. He weighs the request. The reserve strike below is armed to kill ships. To attack Midway, they must be rearmed. Torpedoes off. Land bombs on. It will take an hour, maybe more. During that hour, his carriers will be vulnerable. Their hangars a chaos of ordnance and fuel and men. But Nagumo has been led to believe the American carriers are not waiting near Midway, and that any movement from Pearl Harbor should be detected before they can threaten him. The intelligence says so. The submarines are watching for them, and the submarines have reported nothing. Nagumo gives the order at 7:15. Rearm the reserve aircraft with land bombs. Bring them up for a second strike on Midway. Deep in the hangars, the crews go to work. They pull the trolleys with the torpedoes back away from the aircraft. They open the bomb bay doors of the Kates. They begin unbolting the torpedoes and lowering them back onto their wheeled cradles. They begin rolling in the 800-kilogram land bombs. The proper procedure is to lower each removed torpedo back down to the magazine, 3 decks below, before starting to load the bombs. It is a safety rule written in blood, learned from years of experience with volatile ordnance in enclosed spaces. It takes time. It takes elevators. It takes men who are not needed elsewhere. Nagumo needs the aircraft rearmed fast. The crews leave the torpedoes on the hangar deck, stacked, chained down, waiting for later. The floor of the hangar is now covered in live torpedoes lying next to aircraft being pumped full of aviation gasoline. The wrong spark, the wrong flame, the wrong hit anywhere in this room will cause a chain reaction that no damage control team on Earth can contain. The order has been given. The mistake has been made. Nothing has happened yet. At 7:28, 200 miles away, everything changes. 200 miles to the northeast, a Japanese float plane is climbing through the morning haze. It has taken off 30 minutes late. It should have launched at 4:30 like all the other search aircraft, but the catapult on the heavy cruiser, Tone, jammed. The mechanics fought the mechanism for half an hour before they finally got it firing. The plane lurched into the sky at 5 o'clock, half an hour behind the search pattern. The pilot is Petty Officer First Class Amari, and he is flying his assigned sector to the northeast of the fleet. It is number 5. One of the outer patrol lines, the one that runs closest to where Point Luck would be, if anyone knew that Point Luck existed. At 7:28, Amari looks down through a break in the clouds and sees ships. He counts them, 10 surface ships, cruisers and destroyers, running eastward on a heading of 150 degrees at 20 knots. He grabs his radio and transmits. Sighted 10 enemy surface ships, bearing 010 from Midway, distance 240 miles. The message reaches Akagi at 7:45. Nagumo reads it. He goes still. Cruisers and destroyers, in that formation, on that heading, mean one thing. They are the escort for something else. Something big. Something that must not be there. But Amari's message does not say what he is escorting. He is too far away, at too oblique an angle, to see the center of the formation. For the next 40 minutes, Nagumo has a report that terrifies him and tells him nothing. The reserve aircraft, the ship killers, are being torn apart and reassembled with the wrong ordnance. The order has already gone out. Bombs are being loaded. Torpedoes are being stacked on the hangar deck. It is too late to stop. Nagumo does what a good commander must never do. He hesitates. At 7:45, he sends a signal to his air staff. Prepare to carry out attacks on enemy fleet. Retain torpedoes on aircraft not yet loaded with bombs. It is a stop order shouted into a hurricane. Half the reserve is already stripped. Half is not. The crews stop mid-motion, looking at each other, waiting for clarification. Some Kates now have bombs. Some still have torpedoes. Some have neither, waiting for the next command. The hangar deck is chaos. And in the middle of that chaos, 35 minutes later, the message that Nagumo dreaded arrives. At 8:20, Amari transmits a correction. Enemy appears to be accompanied by what looks like a carrier. Nagumo has an American carrier 240 miles away, and his ship killers are half-armed with the wrong bombs. If Tone's scout had launched on schedule, it might have reported the American force roughly 30 minutes earlier, giving Nagumo more time to react. Instead, the Midway strike had already begun launching. Every minute Amari lost on that jammed catapult was a minute Nagumo would never get back. The catapult jammed, and 30 minutes lost in the dawn is now 30 minutes lost forever. On Hiryu, watching the mess unfold from a mile off Akagi's starboard beam, Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi is losing patience. Yamaguchi is the aviator. Yamaguchi is the man who understands what carriers do and how quickly they die if you give the enemy time. He does not need to wait for the perfect coordinated strike. He does not need a full load of torpedoes on every aircraft. He needs bombs in the air, and he needs them now. At 8:30, he sends a flag signal to Akagi. Consider it advisable to launch attack force immediately. Nagumo reads the signal. He does not answer at once. Yamaguchi is right. Everything in Yamaguchi's training and experience is right. Launch what is ready. Launch the Naval dive bombers, which do not need to be rearmed because they carry bombs anyway. Launch the fighters. Send a partial strike. Hit the American carriers before they can hit you. It is the aviator's answer. It is the correct answer. Nagumo says no. He gives 3 reasons, all of them defensible, all of them wrong. First, Tomonaga's strike is coming home from Midway. Some aircraft are shot up. Some are running out of fuel. If Nagumo does not clear his flight decks to recover them, they will ditch in the sea. Second, Japanese naval doctrine calls for the coordinated strike. Everything at once. Bombs and torpedoes together, from multiple directions, overwhelming the enemy's defenses. Sending a partial strike violates the doctrine. Third, if he launches now, he strips his own combat air patrol of fighter support. His decks will be more vulnerable, not less. Every reason is defensible on paper. Every reason will kill him. At 8:37, Nagumo begins recovering Tomonaga's returning aircraft. For the next 41 minutes, from 8:37 to 9:18, the 4 Japanese carriers turn into the wind and take their aircraft aboard. Elevators run continuously, bringing planes down into the hangars, where the chaos of rearmament is already at maximum intensity. Now new fuel needs to be loaded. Now new damage assessments have to be done. Now the aircrew who just fought over Midway have to be debriefed. Now the hangars hold not just the reserve strike being rearmed for the 3rd time, but also the recovered strike being refueled and patched. The hangar deck of every Japanese carrier is now a room full of aircraft in various states of service, torpedoes on trolleys, bombs on trolleys, drums of aviation gasoline being pumped through open lines, mechanics with wrenches, ordnance men with slings, pilots being pulled out of cockpits, and hundreds of men moving between all of it. At 9:17, the last of Tomonaga's aircraft is aboard. Nagumo orders his fleet to turn northeast, toward the American carriers, and to work up to full speed. He plans to launch a full coordinated strike at 10:30. He never launches it, because for the next hour the Americans never leave him alone. They come in pieces, and the pieces come first from Hornet. Hornet is the newest American carrier, commissioned only 8 months earlier. Her air group is untested. Her air group commander, Commander Stanhope Ring, is not popular with his pilots. When Hornet launches her strike at 7:55, the entire deckload of 59 aircraft assembles overhead and turns onto a course that Ring has personally calculated, 265 degrees. The course is wrong. The Japanese carriers are actually to the west-southwest, closer to 240 degrees. Ring is flying too far north. His formation flies for over an hour and sees nothing. Then the Wildcats, the fighter escort, begin to run out of fuel. Their tanks are smaller than the bombers. They cannot make the return trip if they stay much longer. The fighters try to signal Ring. They wave. They wag their wings. They break formation. Ring will not turn. One by one, all 10 of Hornet's Wildcats ditch in the empty Pacific. Their pilots inflate their life rafts and wait. Some are picked up days later. Some are never seen again. Ring's dive bombers, 34 aircraft, fly on until they too are running low on fuel. Ring finally turns. Some of his aircraft turn back toward Hornet. Others fly for Midway. None of them find the Japanese fleet. It is remembered by the men who flew it as the flight to nowhere. But one squadron does not follow Ring's course. Torpedo Squadron 8, under Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, breaks formation shortly after departure. Waldron is 100% convinced that Ring is flying the wrong heading. He turns his 15 slow, obsolete Devastator torpedo bombers southwest. He flies straight toward the enemy. Waldron has no fighter escort. His Devastators cruise at 130 miles per hour. Their torpedoes must be dropped from 200 feet or lower at less than 200 knots, within 1,000 yards of the target. In the summer of 1942, this is a death sentence. Everyone knows it. Waldron knows it. Every man in his squadron knows it. At 9:20 in the morning, they find the Kido Butai. The Japanese see them coming from 20 miles out. 15 slow specks against a bright horizon. 30 Zeros drop out of the combat air patrol and swarm down to meet them. There is no cover, there is no evasion. The Devastators bore in through a wall of cannon fire, 20mm shells punching through their thin aluminum skin, their fabric-covered control surfaces shredding away. One by one they go down. Some explode. Some cartwheel into the sea. Some make it to torpedo drop range, with their engines already burning, launch, and are then destroyed on the retirement. 15 Devastators. 30 men. In 8 minutes they are all gone. 29 men die. One survives. His name is Ensign George Gay. He is 25 years old. His aircraft is shot down during the torpedo run. He crash lands on the sea, extracts himself from the sinking cockpit, and inflates a small rubber seat cushion, which he pulls over his head to hide from the Japanese ships steaming past him. For the next several hours, George Gay floats in the middle of the Kido Butai, breathing through the gap between the cushion and the water, watching the battle unfold from sea level. Not a single torpedo hits. 20 minutes later, Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise comes in. 14 Devastators under Lieutenant Commander Eugene Lindsay. Lindsay is 37. His face and back are bandaged from injuries suffered in a landing accident days earlier. He should not be in the air. He is flying anyway. 10 of his 14 aircraft are shot down. Lindsay is killed. No torpedoes hit. Then Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown arrives. 12 Devastators under Lieutenant Commander Lance Massey. Massey is 33. He has fighter escort this time. 6 Wildcats under Lieutenant Commander John Thatch. But the Wildcats are outnumbered 5-1 by the Zeros and are fighting their own separate battle high above. 10 of 12 Devastators are shot down. Massey is killed. No torpedoes hit. The final ledger of the American carrier torpedo attack is unbearable. 41 devastators attacked. Only 6 returned to their carriers. Not a single torpedo hit, but the slaughter has consequences that no one planned. For over an hour, the Japanese combat air patrol has been fighting at wave-top height. Every Zero pilot who scrambled to intercept the torpedo planes has spent the last 60 minutes down low, burning fuel at maximum power, expending ammunition, chasing slow-moving devastators across the wave-tops. The Kido Butai has no radar. It has no fighter direction system. Each Zero section chooses its own targets and its own altitude, and every one of them has chosen low. The sky above the Japanese fleet, from 5,000 feet up to 20,000 feet, is empty. The carriers themselves have been steaming in evasive patterns for over an hour, twisting through hard turns to comb their wakes past Waldron's torpedoes, past Lindsay's, past Massey's. Every hard turn throws the flight deck off the wind. Every minute spent avoiding a torpedo is a minute not spent launching the strike that Nagumo has been trying to assemble since 8:30. His hangars are crowded with aircraft undergoing rearming and refueling. His flight decks are busy launching and recovering combat air patrol fighters. His fleet has been chasing its tail for an hour, and 20,000 feet above him, from 2 different directions, 33 American dive bombers are converging on his position. Wade McClusky has a problem. He is flying at 19,000 feet with the Enterprise Air Group, 33 SBD Dauntless dive bombers. He is 39 years old. He is a fighter pilot by trade, only recently transitioned to command a mixed dive bomber group, and he does not fully trust his own navigation. His course was calculated from the last known position of the Japanese fleet, reported by the Midway search planes at dawn. It should have brought him over the Kido Butai at 9:20. It is now 9:55. He is above empty ocean. Fuel is the killer now. The SBD carries enough fuel for roughly 6 hours of flight. McClusky has been in the air for over 3. If he turns back now, he will make it home. If he stays out much longer, some of his aircraft will not. His pilots are watching their gauges. Some of them expect the recall signal any minute. It is the doctrine. It is the safe choice. When the search pattern fails, the strike returns to the carrier and tries again later. McClusky does not turn back. He makes a decision that costs him nothing to make and might cost every man in his squadron their lives. He commits to a search expansion beyond the safe range. He turns northwest into a sector where the Japanese might have gone if they turned toward Midway to close the range. He knows that some of the aircraft with him will not have the fuel to reach Enterprise again. He orders the expansion anyway. 10 minutes into the new heading, at approximately 9:55, he sees something. Far below, cutting a white knife blade of wake across the dark blue sea, a single Japanese destroyer is running northwest at maximum speed. It is alone. It is racing to catch something. The destroyer is Arashi. 2 hours earlier, while the Kido Butai was maneuvering to launch and recover aircraft, the American submarine Nautilus, hull number SS-168, penetrated the Japanese screen and fired torpedoes at the carrier Kaga. The torpedoes ran hot, but they were defective, an epidemic problem with American torpedoes in 1942. They missed. One of them struck Kaga's side and failed to explode. 2 Japanese sailors from Kaga climbed onto the floating hulk of the dud torpedo and clung to it in the water until they were rescued. Nautilus dove to escape the counterattack. Arashi was ordered to stay behind and hunt her. Arashi dropped depth charges for an hour, then broke off the search and turned to rejoin the fleet at maximum speed. Her wake pointed straight at the Kido Butai. McClusky looks down. He sees the destroyer. He calculates the geometry. He turns his 33 dive bombers to follow. 10 minutes later, at approximately 10:05, he crests a low bank of clouds, and the entire Japanese fleet spreads out beneath him. 4 carriers, their escorts. wakes carving arcs in the sea as they twist away from the torpedo attacks. Zeros still at sea level. Flight decks busy with combat air patrol operations, while most of the Japanese strike aircraft remain below in the hangars. And no one is looking up. An American submarine fired defective torpedoes at a Japanese carrier and missed. A Japanese destroyer was ordered to stay behind and hunt her. The destroyer's wake pointed at the fleet. An American commander pushed his aircraft past the safe fuel margin to keep searching. He saw the wake. He followed it home. If any link in that chain had been different, McClusky would have turned back with empty ocean under his wings. The Enterprise strike would never have arrived, and the man commanding the fleet below him would have launched his coordinated attack at 10:30 as planned. The chain held. McClusky is here, and the Japanese have 4 minutes left before the world changes, because McClusky is not alone. At almost the same moment, coming in from a completely different direction, 17 SBD Dauntless dive bombers from the Yorktown Air Group crest a bank of clouds and see the same fleet. They are bombing Squadron 3 under Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie. Leslie is 39, a career naval aviator, cool under pressure and precise in the air. He has been flying his own search, on his own vector, on his own timing. He has never coordinated with McClusky. Neither commander knows the other is in the same sky. They arrive within 60 seconds of each other. The mathematics of this coincidence are staggering. 2 dive bomber groups, launched from 2 different carriers, on 2 different headings, with no radio communication between them, converge on the same target at the same instant. It has never happened before in the history of naval air combat. It will never happen again. If either group had arrived alone, the Zeros would have had time to climb from sea level and intercept. 20 Zeros pulling up through 15,000 feet can savage even a fully coordinated dive bomber attack. The Americans would have taken heavy losses. Some carriers might have escaped. But 2 groups from 2 directions at the same second split the defense before the defense can even begin to form. The Zeros are still at sea level. They see the Americans start their dive and they claw for altitude, but altitude cannot be bought that fast. The dive bombers will be in their attack before the fighters can reach them. Leslie has one more problem to overcome. His aircraft and 3 others in his squadron are equipped with a new electric arming system for their 500-pound bombs. The switches malfunction in the cold air at high altitude. When Leslie flips his arming switch, the electric solenoid releases the bomb instead of arming it. His bomb falls away, tumbling into the sea 5 miles below. 3 other pilots in Bombing 3 lose their bombs the same way. Leslie is the squadron commander. He has no bomb. He continues the attack anyway. He leads his remaining pilots down onto the Japanese carrier Soryu with his machine guns firing and no ordnance under his wings. Because leaving now would break the timing of the dive, and the timing is everything. McClusky sees the Japanese fleet below him and issues his order. His 2 squadrons, Bombing 6 and Scouting 6, will split the targets. Scouting 6, in the lead, will take the nearer carrier. Bombing 6, following behind, will take the farther one. At 10:20, McClusky pushes over into his dive. Behind him, 30 other dive bombers follow, one by one, their perforated dive brakes opening on their trailing edges, their noses dropping through the horizon and pointing straight down at 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. The wind through the dive brakes builds to a shriek. The airspeed indicators climb through 200 knots, 300, 400. In the 3rd section of Bombing 6, at the tail of the formation, Lieutenant Richard Best pushes his stick forward and follows McClusky down. He is aiming for the carrier Kaga. He does not yet know that he is about to break formation and change the history of the world. 10:22 in the morning. Richard Best falls through 15,000 feet in a 70-degree dive, and the world narrows to the size of a gun sight. The wind through the dive brakes sounds like a locomotive tearing itself apart. The airspeed needle hovers at 240 knots. His hands are steady on the stick. His right thumb rests on the bomb release. Below him, filling more of his windscreen every second, is the yellow flight deck of the Japanese aircraft carrier Kaga, the red circle of the rising sun painted across her forward elevator. He is going to kill her, he can see it. The angle is perfect. The wind correction is right. In another 20 seconds, his 1,000-pound bomb will plunge toward her flight deck, with enough explosive force to cause catastrophic damage if it hits the right place. Then he sees them. Above him and to his right, McClusky's Scouting 6 is also diving on Kaga, all of them. 25 aircraft on a single carrier. Behind him, the rest of Bombing 6 is following him down, aiming at the same target. Too many Enterprise dive bombers are converging on Kaga in the confusion of the attack. Every American bomb is going to the same target. Best has 1/2 of 1 second to decide. He shoves his stick to the left. He pulls hard on the throttle. His 2 wingmen, Lieutenant Junior Grade Edwin Kroger and Ensign Frederick Weber, see him brake and follow him without a word into a screaming diving turn across the sky. The rest of Bombing 6, below and behind them, misses the signal. They continue down onto Kaga with the others. 3 American dive bombers peel out of the attack and swing left toward a different carrier. The flagship, Akagi, best rolls out at 10,000 feet, with Akagi filling his windscreen from a new angle. His 2 wingmen are still with him. Below, the Japanese flagship is turning hard to starboard, her wake a curving white slash in the dark blue sea. He can see men running on her flight deck. He can see the anti-aircraft gunners swinging their mounts up toward him. He pushes over into a second dive. Airspeed builds, 200 knots, 250, 300. The dive brakes shudder. Akagi grows. The red circle of the rising sun on her forward elevator stares back at him like an eye. 1,500 feet. He can smell hot oil in the cockpit and something acrid he does not yet recognize. His oxygen mask is chafing at his face. His fingers ache from squeezing the stick. The airspeed indicator is redlined and climbing anyway. His thumb finds the bomb release. He pulls. The 1,000-pound bomb drops away from the belly of his aircraft, hangs for a millisecond in the airstream, and then falls toward Akagi as Best begins his pullout. He pulls the stick back into his stomach. The dive brakes come in. The G-force squeezes his vision down to a grey tunnel. He is at 3,000 feet, then 4, then 5, climbing away with tracer fire whipping past his canopy from the ships below. He looks back over his shoulder. Behind him, on the deck of Akagi, a plume of black smoke is already climbing. His bomb has hit almost dead amidships, just aft of the middle elevator. It has punched through the wooden flight deck as if the deck were paper. It has continued down through the upper hangar deck and detonated in the middle of the room. The upper hangar of Akagi, in that instant, contains Kate torpedo bombers being prepared for launch. It contains torpedoes that were removed during Nagumo's first rearmament order and then never sent below to the magazines because there was no time. It contains bombs that were brought up to replace those torpedoes and then abandoned when the second order reversed the first. It contains fuel hoses charging aircraft tanks and drums of aviation gasoline that were staged near the elevator because the ordnance crews needed them close. One American bomb detonates in the middle of that room. The blast kills and wounds men in the hangar. It ignites fueled aircraft. It helps start the fires and secondary explosions that soon overwhelm Akagi's damage control efforts. The gasoline ignites the ordnance stacked on the deck. The ordnance ignites the ordnance on the aircraft. And the aircraft, 30 tons of fueled and armed metal in a sealed room, becomes secondary explosives that no one can stop. Within minutes, the entire midsection of Akagi is a torch that no fire main can reach. At almost the same moment, across the water, Kaga takes McClusky's attack. 4 bombs, perhaps 5, punch through her flight deck within the span of a few seconds. The first hits far forward and blows the anchor windlass into the sky. The second explodes on her bridge, killing Captain Jisaku Okada and virtually every officer standing with him. The third and fourth walk down her flight deck, tearing holes into her upper hangar, where her strike is also being armed and fueled, and where her ordnance is also stacked around aircraft, because her deck crews are also short of time. Fire erupts inside Kaga instantly. Her fuel lines rupture. Her ammunition begins to cook off. She goes dead in the water within 20 minutes, her flight deck warping upward in great blistered sheets from the heat below. 2 miles away, Maxwell Leslie leads Bombing 3 down onto Soryu with his empty bomb rack and his machine guns firing. Behind him, his squadron drops with textbook precision. 3 bombs hit Soryu almost simultaneously. 1 forward, 1 amidships, 1 aft. All 3 penetrate her flight deck. All 3 explode in her hangars. Soryu's boilers rupture. Her steam lines burst. She coasts to a stop with her engines running down and her flight deck already collapsing into itself. Her captain, Ryusaku Yanagimoto, refuses to leave the signal platform. He is last seen on the burning platform, refusing rescue, singing the national anthem as his crew is dragged into the sea by the destroyers alongside. The Japanese damage control parties fight the fires with the courage that has always defined the Imperial Navy. The fires cannot be fought. The magazines are cooking. The elevators are jammed with wreckage. The fire mains have been severed by the initial blasts. Men in leather helmets crawl through burning corridors, trying to reach compartments that no longer exist. The order to abandon ship comes to Soryu at 10:45, to Kaga at 4:30 in the afternoon, after 6 hours of futile firefighting. On Akagi, Nagumo and his staff leave the burning flagship shortly after the morning attack and transfer command to the light cruiser Nagara. Akagi's crew continues fighting the fires for hours before the carrier is finally abandoned and later scuttled by her own destroyers before dawn on the 5th of June. 6 minutes, 10:22 to 10:28. Within minutes, 3 of the Kido Butai's 4 fleet carriers have been mortally damaged, leaving Hiryu as the only operational Japanese carrier in Nagumo's striking force. The traditional 5-minute account was increasingly challenged through Japanese operational records, survivor testimony, and later scholarship, culminating in detailed, modern reassessments that showed the strike aircraft were not spotted on the flight decks ready to launch. The story most Americans will hear, and most Japanese will hear, and most historians will write for 2 generations after the war, is the story told by Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, the man who led the attack on Pearl Harbor, and who was aboard Akagi that morning recovering from an appendix operation. Fuchida writes, in his memoir published in 1951, that when the American bombs began to fall, the Japanese strike aircraft were spotted on the flight deck, engines turning, pilots in their cockpits, torpedoes and bombs armed and ready. The fleet was 5 minutes from launching a coordinated counterstrike that would have destroyed the American carriers. 5 fateful minutes, he calls them. 5 minutes that decided the Pacific War. It is a wonderful story. It is dramatic. It is elegiac. It puts the Japanese defeat down to bad luck. 5 minutes of bad timing rather than to any deeper failure of doctrine or command. It is not true. Akagi's flight operations log records that at 10:10 in the morning, 12 minutes before the American bombs hit, the ship was recovering combat air patrol fighters. She had turned into the wind. Her flight deck was clear to receive returning aircraft. A flight deck engaged in landing operations cannot simultaneously hold a strike spotted for launch. The 2 operations are mechanically incompatible. Aircraft land into the wind at the stern and taxi forward. Strike aircraft launch into the wind from the same deck space. They cannot both be on the deck at the same time. The Japanese strike Fuchida describes was still down in the hangars at 10:10. Bringing it up, spotting it on the deck, warming up its engines, arming it, and launching it would have taken substantially longer than 5 minutes. There is one more piece of evidence, and it is unanswerable. Hiryu, the fourth Japanese carrier, was steaming apart from the others and was not hit in the American attack. She was untouched. Her hangars were the only ones in the fleet still intact. Her strike aircraft were still available. She was at 10:28, exactly what Fuchida claimed all 4 Japanese carriers had been at 10:22. Ready? Waiting. Rearmed. Prepared for the coordinated launch that Nagumo had been trying to organize all morning. If Fuchida was right, if the Japanese fleet had truly been 5 minutes from launching at 10:22, then Hiryu should have been able to launch her strike almost immediately after the attack ended, within 5 minutes, 10 at most. Hiryu launched her first counterstrike at 10:54, 26 minutes after the attack on the other 3 carriers. And she did it in a screaming rush, abandoning every safety protocol, with her captain and her admiral driving her crews at maximum speed because the fate of the Empire depended on it. Even Hiryu, unhit, undamaged, with her full ordnance load and her hangars untouched, needed 26 minutes just to get her strike into the air. The 6 minutes were real. The near miss was not. The Japanese were not 5 minutes from launching a fully coordinated counterstrike. Their strike aircraft were still below decks, and spotting, preparing, and launching a major strike would have required substantially more time. Fuchida's influential post-war account presented a dramatic 5-minute version that later research using Japanese operational records and survivor testimony has shown to be inaccurate. The truth is worse than the story he told, because the truth is that the Kido Butai did not lose because of bad luck. It lost because it was commanded on that morning by a man who could not decide, running a doctrine that could not adapt, blinded by an intelligence system that could not see. Hiryu fights on alone. She launches her first counterstrike at 10:54. 18 Naval dive bombers under the command of Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi, escorted by 6 Zeros. They follow the retiring American attack back to its source and find Yorktown just after noon. They come in through a wall of anti-aircraft fire. Most of the Vals are shot down, but 3 bombs get through. 1 explodes on the flight deck. 1 penetrates and detonates in a berthing compartment. 1 knocks out 3 of Yorktown's 9 boilers and severs the uptakes from 4 more. The ship stops, smoke pours from her stack. Fletcher transfers his flag to the heavy cruiser Astoria, because a stopped carrier is no place for a commander to run a battle. Hiryu launches her second strike at 1:31 in the afternoon. 10 Kate torpedo bombers under Joichi Tominaga, the same man who led the morning attack on Midway. His left-wing fuel tank was holed by anti-aircraft fire that morning and cannot be repaired in time. He knows he does not have the fuel to return. He climbs into the cockpit anyway. He leads his squadron east toward the American fleet. He finds Yorktown at 2:30. Her damage control crews have gotten her back up to 19 knots on the boilers still available. She is underway when Tominaga's torpedo planes come in. He splits his formation to attack from 2 sides. Yorktown turns into the first group and combs their torpedoes past her bow. The second group closes on her port side while she is committed to the turn. 2 torpedoes hit her amidships. She lists 23 degrees within minutes. Her captain, Elliot Buckmaster, gives the order to abandon ship. He believes she is going to capsize. Tominaga does not see her fall. He is already dead. His Kate, low on fuel, is caught by American fighters and shot down into the sea seconds after his torpedo drop. Hiryu has fought her battle. She has crippled an American carrier and lost most of her strike aircraft doing it. In the late afternoon, her surviving pilots gather on her flight deck for a hot meal and a briefing on the third attack, planned for dusk. The third attack never launches. At 5:03 in the afternoon, American dive bombers find Hiryu. SPDs from Enterprise and Yorktown, some flown by pilots from Yorktown, who have already lost their own carrier, and have hitched rides back into the fight aboard Enterprise. They dive out of the low sun. 4 bombs hit Hiryu in quick succession. Her forward elevator is blown into the air and lands upright against her bridge, blocking the view forward. Her flight deck opens like a can. Her hangars catch fire. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, the man who told Nagumo to launch immediately, the man who understood what carriers do and how quickly they die, refuses to leave his flagship. His staff pleads with him. He refuses. He removes his cap and hands it to a departing staff officer as a keepsake for his family. He goes down with Hiryu at dawn on the 5th of June, the most capable carrier admiral in the Imperial Navy, dead at 49. Yorktown does not sink that day. Her damage control teams reach her again in the afternoon of the 5th and begin to pump her out. She is under tow, moving slowly toward Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese submarine I-168 fires 4 torpedoes at her on the afternoon of the 6th of June. 2 hit Yorktown. 1 hits the destroyer Hammond, which is tied alongside her, feeding electrical power to her damage control pumps. Hammond breaks in half and sinks in 4 minutes. 80 of her sailors die in the water when their own ship's depth charges, sinking with the wreck, detonate at their set depth. Yorktown rolls over and sinks at dawn on the 7th of June, 3 days after the 6 minutes that decided the battle. The final ledger is unbearable in either direction. Japan lost 4 fleet aircraft carriers, the heavy cruiser Mikuma, roughly 248 carrier aircraft, and more than 3,000 men. Most Japanese carrier air crew survived, but more than 700 highly trained aircraft technicians and maintainers were among the dead, along with many other sailors and specialists. The plane captains, the armorers, the flight deck crews, the men who knew how to keep a carrier running, their loss could not be replaced. The United States lost 1 fleet carrier, 1 destroyer, 150 aircraft, and just over 300 men. 6 minutes did not end the war. The war ran 3 more years and 2 more months. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, all of it was still to come, and all of it would cost hundreds of thousands more lives. But 6 minutes ended the Japanese offensive. The planned invasion of Fiji and Samoa was postponed within a week and cancelled within a month. 2 months after Midway, American Marines waded ashore on Guadalcanal, and the war in the Pacific began its long, bloody reversal. Behind everything stood the arithmetic that no battle could fix. American industrial capacity was already expanding at a rate Japan could not match. The great wave of new American fleet and light carriers would enter service mainly from 1943 onward, but the shipyards were already laying keels, welding hulls, training crews. In 1942, American factories built 47,000 aircraft. Japan built fewer than 9,000. Every month the war continued, the gap widened. Every month Japan grew relatively weaker. Yamamoto had known this before Pearl Harbor. He had gambled that a series of quick, decisive victories could force the Americans to negotiate before their industry came online. Midway was the last of those victories he needed. Midway was the one he lost. The men scattered. Chuichi Nagumo was quietly moved to shore commands after Midway. He shot himself in a cave on Saipan in July of 1944, moments before American Marines overran his position. Isoroku Yamamoto was ambushed and killed in April of 1943 over Bougainville, when American fighters intercepted his transport aircraft. The Americans knew his flight schedule because they had read it in the same Japanese naval code that had betrayed the Midway operation. The circle closed. The code that killed the Kido Butai killed its architect 11 months later. Richard Best coughed blood on the flight deck of Enterprise the evening of June 4th. The oxygen bottle in his cockpit had been contaminated with caustic soda dust, which he had inhaled at altitude and which had activated a latent tuberculosis in his lungs. He never flew a combat mission again. He lived until 2001, and until the last years of his life he insisted, with perfect accuracy and perfect modesty, that his bomb was one of hundreds that day, and that he had simply been lucky to be there. Mitsuo Fuchida survived Akagi's sinking with both ankles broken. He became the Western world's favorite Japanese witness for 40 years, telling and retelling his story of the 5 Fateful Minutes on lecture tours across the United States. He converted to Christianity after the war. He died in 1976, believing his own story to the end. George Gay, the man in the water, was picked up by a PBY the next morning. He recovered from his wounds. He served out the war. He wrote a book. He lived until 1994. When he died, his family flew to Midway and scattered his ashes on the sea, over the spot where the other 29 men of Torpedo Squadron 8 had gone in ahead of him. On the morning the Pacific War turned. Not one hero, not one moment. 6 minutes was the collision point of 100 decisions, each of them made by ordinary men who could not have known what they were building. Rochefort in a basement, breaking a code that his superiors did not believe he had broken. Leighton walking into Nimitz's office with a prediction accurate to 5 minutes and 5 miles. 1,400 welders at Pearl Harbor Navy Yard, working through 72 hours without sleep to send a wrecked ship back to sea. Nimitz signing the order to accept the risk. Waldron dying with his men to drag the Zeros down to sea level. Nautilus firing torpedoes that missed but sent a destroyer racing home. McClusky pushing his aircraft past the safe fuel margin to find that destroyer's wake. Leslie diving with no bomb because leaving now would break the timing. Best recognizing that too many Enterprise dive bombers were converging on Kaga and redirecting his small section toward Akagi in the final moments of the attack. Remove any single link in that chain, and the battle might have unfolded very differently, but exactly how the outcome would have changed can never be known. What can be said is that the chain held, all of it, every link. Japan lost at Midway through a combination of compromised operational secrecy, flawed reconnaissance and intelligence assumptions, doctrinal and command constraints, repeated American attacks, effective American intelligence, tactical decisions, and extraordinary timing, all against the larger backdrop of an industrial imbalance Japan could not overcome in a prolonged war. 6 minutes did not cost Japan the war. 6 minutes cost Japan the ability to win it. And in the Second World War, those two things were never the same.